Recent missions trip to Ukraine. They just got back. It was about 2 weeks. And God did a lot of things, and they kept us updated with messages and a lot of things going on with the war over there. And I'm going to let them share about that. Would y'all come on down and give them a hand? Before I hand them this, grab another one. You need 2 mics. Grab that other mic back there. So y'all can both speak and interrupt each other, right? That's fine.
Talk at the same time.
He's polite. We'll interrupt each other. Perfect. I just wanted to say. Yeah. Oh! Woo! See if he gets invited back. All right. I love this guy right here. Come on. He's poured in. He's poured in a lot for you guys. You know, he's been a big partner with us, helping us get the lodge going. He loves you guys, and he has a heart for this place and recovery. So if you don't know that already, his heart is for you if you haven't met him yet. And you'll know it after hearing him talk for 2 minutes that he loves you. But I'm excited. I want to show this last thing. I'm going to turn it over. That this is just the beginning of missions for Adult and Teen Challenge of Arkansas. Is that all right? Yeah. This is just the catalyst to get us started and get us excited. And I don't know what it's going to look like yet. And this trip wasn't exactly what it's going to look like going forward, but I believe God's laid on my heart, and I've talked to Zach about it, that we need to start partnering with global teen challenges. We need to start sending missions trips of students and staff across seas to help other teen challenges across the world. We need to start sending finances across the seas to help other teen challenges across the world. And so this is just the catalyst to get us started. And so I am pumped about it. I'm excited about the vision that God's placed. And so that's going to be coming over the next couple of years and ongoing as long as God has me here, for sure, that we're going to be sending missions trips, and not just missions trips from our organization, but missionaries that want to go into the mission field and maybe go serve on staff overseas somewhere, or somewhere maybe in the United States with other teen challenges that can pour in. This is a mission field, and I'm just excited that God is raising up missionaries out of the mission field. How cool is that? God can just redeem and do anything He wants, and I'm just grateful to it. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over. Here you go. Get Pastor Mark Garner.
So I just have to reinforce what Stephen said earlier. I wrote a note here about halfway through the worship time, and just said in my note, I said, there is just nothing. There ain't nothing like Ozark Mountain worship bands. You guys are the best. That was great. I enjoyed the worship time, and it was awesome. Oh, are you still tired, Zach? No. See? He's 29, I'm 66. I was tired yesterday. I'm better today. We went to Ukraine and did some cool things, and we're going to show you some pictures and talk all about that. We have till, 1 o'clock, is that right?
What time is lunch, guys?
Midnight.
So I'm going to ask Zach to come up. I've asked him to share for a few minutes here as to what this trip meant to him, a couple of things that just really spoke to his heart, and then we're going to share some pictures together. So Zach, bless us.
Okay, so I'll start with kind of my observations and my learning. So I think you go on a trip, and my mindset when I went was like, I've got skills. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm good with my hands. I can't wait to work. I can't wait to do some things that they need help with, and I want to help and whatnot. I had no idea what to expect, but I was going to work. And God kind of worked on my heart, because the first day when we got to Ukraine and we got to the place where we were going to work, things started kicking off, and I couldn't speak the language, and I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know what we were doing. And just instantaneously, I remembered what it was like to not be in control, not be the one like doing. And so my first thought was like, I feel so out of place. What am I doing? And the day picked up and whatnot, and day 2 came, and I felt the same way kind of, and I was kind of struggling with that. And day 3 came, and we did a lot, but we also had some unique bonding there was some understanding. We came to some understanding when we were sitting on top of a pile of potatoes, sweating, covered in mud, with kids and adults and people my age, and we were all tired and we had all worked a bunch. And I sat there and I thought, you idiot. It's about people. It's not about doing. It's not about doing. And so, yet again, over the next several days, when we sat around the dinner table until 10 or 11 some nights, and we talked and ate a little finger foods, and what's next, and you guys see me, I roll from one task to the other, and I sat there and I'm like, it's crowded. We're at a kitchen table. There's 11 people squeezed into a kitchen that's pretty small, and kids are running around, whining, playing, and the first couple of days I was seriously uncomfortable, really uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, I ate. I'm tired. I'm ready. Y'all stressing me out. And then, the second or third day, I was like, I get it. It's not about doing. It's just about being with each other. It's about experiencing each other. It's about interacting. It's about watching the kids play. It's about being the fun Uncle Zach that I know how to be. It just registered with me again that it's about being with God. It's about being with people, and it's not about doing. And so I wrote a few things down. So it's funny that we're doing, two kind of messages, because while we were there, the church we went to had three different messages, three different speakers had a nice little sermonette for us. It was pretty cool. And so we've got a couple of things. I'm going to talk about something from a young age. Jacob wanted a blessing, and so he began to chase and work for a blessing. You guys are familiar with Jacob, right? He started chasing that blessing. He started working for a blessing. He was deceitful to gain that blessing, right? He was even deceitful to the point of involving God's name in his deceit. When he went and got the two goats from the field, it says in Genesis 27:20, says, but Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? He answered, because the Lord your God has granted me success. Right? He didn't go kill anything. He went and got the goats out of their field, right? And so already he's willing to do whatever for that blessing. And Jacob had a dream where God spoke to him, and Jacob committed that the Lord would be his God, but there was a clause with it. So Genesis 28:20 through 21 says, then Jacob made a vow, if God will be with me and will keep me in the way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. It wasn't, the Lord shall be my God. It was, God, if you do A, B, C, D, and E for me, you'll be my God. And so my thoughts from that is it's conditional surrender, while still trying to maintain control. I think Jacob is still trying to strive and work for his blessing instead of trusting God for the blessing he had just promised in previous verses in Jacob's dream. Right? Because the verses prior, God was saying things like, I'm going to be with you, I'm going to strive with you, right? I'm going to give you many children, right? And so he's still working for that. He's still working for the thing that God has already promised to him. So it continues with striving for his wife, right? What goes around comes around too sometimes. How many of you know that? So he was deceitful in his younger years, and so later in life, Laban was deceitful to him. But that's kind of not the point of what I'm going for. But regardless, Jacob is stubborn and hardworking and still wants Rachel, so he works another 7 years for Rachel's hand, taking charge of his own destiny. Still just grabbing life by the horns, just doing everything he can to be in control, right? He's just fighting to be in control. Like I said, when I went over to Ukraine, it was weird because I wasn't in control, right? And so here's Jacob. He's still grasping for control. So God blesses him with children, and through Leah, and Rachel gets upset, right? And Rachel's talking about, how can we remedy this? And this time, Jacob may be starting to learn. He said, am I in the place of God, whom has withheld from you the fruit of your womb? So he's starting to recognize that he's not God, and he may not always be in control. Yet they still force their hand, and they get the servants so Rachel can have some kids. And so even then, he succumbs to trying to go about it his own way. And it's funny because Abraham did the same thing previously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so again, the catalyst through all this is when Jacob is wrestling with God for his blessing. And all Jacob's tactics, his scheming, his hard work, his striving for a blessing, it seems he thought he could wrestle with God for a blessing. He did that, but I believe the blessing was the hip that God put out of his socket. In all Jacob's striving and prosperity, I believe Jacob felt responsible for his own blessings. Because through all that, he was striving. He was working. He was trying to maintain control of his own destiny, right? He was fighting for that. And so I think he felt responsible for his blessings. So when God touched his hip, that was the real blessing. That was the blessing. It caused Jacob to quit striving and forcing his hand in situations, but to slow down and trust God and his promises, to be with God, not to and not think one must be in control of his own destiny to fulfill God's promises for God. God doesn't need you to fulfill God's promises.
That's right.
And wrestle with God for the blessings that are already promised. So again, in my life, this whole trip brought about a remembrance that things happen. You have to do things, right? That's just part of life. But the ultimate part of my life is just to be with God, and through that love people and be with people. So,
Yeah. And I have to say, it was so exciting to be standing and working with, well, he was doing more work than I was, but working beside and see these conflicts going on behind his eyes. And I just stood back like a dad and smiled and said, I should go in and rescue him. No, he's going to figure it out. And to see how God worked in Zach's life, but how God was able to use him as a blessing for the people that we were staying with, and the people that we were working with. It's pretty amazing. So to stay here, and let's have our title slide here. There you go. Yeah. Okay, next slide. So we went, when we got there, there are a couple, this is Vladimir. And he and his wife Ida were our host. He's the one that is spearheading the ministry, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a minute. And one of the things that they're doing is building the shop building. And go ahead to the next one. And in this, there will be like an automotive shop, a paint shop, a little bit of a furniture shop, and maybe eventually some kind of a bakery or pasta shop. But it's to provide employment for the guys and the gals as they get older and get out of high school, get out of university, and because there's not any, of course, any other jobs there, and so this will provide some type of stability for them as they go forward. So if you look here, the first two slides, this was dirt, and that's the way it was in May when I was there before. Since then, they were able to pour this slab, and then inside the two wings, they got those poured. So the first day that we were there, our job was to pour the concrete from here out to the road. Simple thing, right? Lay a little bit of rebar out there, put some plastic down, lay a little bit of rebar out there, set some skid marks, and call the trucks in, and pour the concrete, and a few hours later you go home. Has any of you ever poured concrete? Yeah, I mean, it's easy, right? Yeah. So there's about, what, 10 of us out there? Yeah, about 10 of us. So next slide. So here we are, we're putting the plastic down, getting the skid marks in, all of that. I'm going, yeah, this is cool, just like always. And then I got to look at it and say, where's the rebar? Well, they don't use rebar. You don't need rebar. And because the slab was actually about 8 to 10 inches thick, they just figured the concrete was cheaper than the rebar. And so they just pour a lot of concrete, right? Next one. And but we didn't call the trucks in. Okay? We did it the old-fashioned way. And we had a couple of pallets of concrete bags like this. Zach, you moved some of those, didn't you? Yeah, 80-pound sacks. And we had, I think, it was either 2 or 3 pallets that we dropped off there. And then, of course, if you've got the cement, then you also have to have, next, you've got to have gravel. Okay, and then over here, there's a big pile of sand. Okay, next one. And then you got to have little mixers. Okay, so those of you that done the construction thing, when I say 20 yards of concrete, you know that's a lot of concrete, right? That's 2 full truckloads. Okay?
That's about as big as the stage.
Yeah. Oh,
Maybe bigger.
no, much bigger than that. Maybe 3 times this stage. And we did that 20 yards like this, a bag at a time and a shovel's full at a time. We had 3 of those going, 10 of us guys. Mixed it all up, put it in wheelbarrows, wheeled it over, got it in there, screeded it and all of that. And, you know, by dark 30, I think we were able to wrap it up. Maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock. We were able to wrap it up and call it a day. That's hard work, gentlemen. especially for Zach. He was really struggling. Let me just say, it was easy for me as I stood there and said, do that and do that. And but that was the first project that we worked on, and getting that done. And then inside, the ceiling needed to be finished with metal. And go ahead with the next one. And here's Zach. So tell us what you were doing up there, Zach.
So in the building, they had to have something, they had to have a border, this board right here. I had to go along all the edges so they could have something to screw that sheet metal to. And so I went around and put those pieces all around the left side of the garage. It took me and another guy most of the afternoon to get that done. So I got to climb around in rafters all day. That was fun.
So next one. So working off the ladder, not too bad. But Zach, you know, he's just always an overachiever. And so when we got to the middle beam there, he's up in the rafters going away. And
I got tired of moving the ladder.
Having a great time. So go ahead. And they were getting things set up. You can see the big expanse there. And then these sheets of metal is what's going up there. So next one. And as we get things moved, next one, then this is what it looks like finished out. All of the joists are running this way, and then the metal forms the ceiling. And so that was another project that we were working on while we were there. Okay, and then next, beautiful house. Love this house. So let me take a pause. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on here. So Vladimir and Ira are just common guys, common married couple. They've got 5 children, and just, you know, they just have the love of God in their hearts. This is, a few years ago, they felt like God wanted them to do some Bible studies in an orphanage. So they were going out once a week and doing some Bible studies, and then the orphanage says, well, you want to take some of these kids home on the weekend or on the holidays? And they're like, okay, sure, we can do that. And so they did that. And this went on for about a year, and the orphanage came back and said, what are you doing to these boys and these girls? What are you doing to them? These were bad kids. And they're not bad kids anymore. Hello. Okay? And we've got another orphanage over here on the other side of town. They'd like for you to come to a Bible study over there. So, okay, we can do that. So they did that, and then, they did it again. Oh, and then there were 4 orphanages that they were going to once a week to do these Bible studies. And then a 5th one called and said, we'd like you to come, do the same thing that you're doing over there. It seems to be working pretty good. And by this time, Vladimir is like, I've got a job. I've got to put food on the table. I can't do more. And a local businessman came to him and said, I understand that this orphanage wants you to come over and do the work that you're doing, but you've told them no. And he said, yeah, I don't have the time. I got to work my job. And he said, I'll tell you what. He said, I grew up in that orphanage, and I've done okay. If you'll go there and add them to the list, you can quit your job, and I'll pay your wage. Wow. Whoa! And so Logan was like, yeah, sure. And so that grew, and then then the war came, and suddenly there were in Ukraine, in the orphan system, when you're 15, you're rotated out of the orphanage. There's no government assistance until you turn 18. And so when you're between the ages of 15 and 18, you've got nothing but the streets, unless you've got a relative that'll take you in. All of these kids, their parents were either dead or they were so immersed in addiction that they could not take care of their children. And so you're 15 years old, you're said, you're out. Where do you go? And that's when Vladimir and Edith stepped in and said, we want to start giving a place for these kids. And that's what they've done. Now they have between 26 and 31 kids living with them now. I say living under their care, and it continues to grow as the war continues on. Many families in the South and the East, where the fighting is the worst, are sending their young daughters up to stay under Vladimir and Ilya's care, because they want to keep them away from the soldiers. And so one of the things, as they got too many boys that they couldn't house anymore, he found this house, the Extreme Fixer-Upper. Yeah, is that a good description? Yeah, Extreme Fixer-Upper. And it was on the market for $35,000. He called some church friends and raised some money, and he had $17,000. And he walked in there and said, "I want to buy the house." And they said, "Great." He said, "I've got $17,000." And they said, "No, it's 35." And he goes, "I got 17." "Well, okay, we'll take 25. "No, I've got 17. "Well, okay, 20,000 final offer." He says, "I've got 17. That's all I got. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm telling you what I got." And they said, "Okay." So they bought this thing for $17,000, and it was a mess. And so the boys are living in there. The roof is leaking. There's no running water. No kitchen facilities when they moved in. And they had 12 boys that moved in there, and then they're doing the work, repairing and remodeling while they live there. I think you guys got a little step above, right? Yeah, at least you're not having to build your own house while you're here, right? And so this area here, they've had to knock down some retaining walls and do some things. Next slide. I call this this is the wing off the side of the house. As I said, Extreme Fixer-Upper. And then the next slide, that's that, and then this is more of the retaining wall area that's destroyed. And then I think the next one is what I'm going to refer to as Zach preaching the Sermon on the Mount. So, Zach, what were you getting ready to do up here?
So that's where I don't know what they were speaking because it's not English, but I think they were saying, let's build this retaining wall out of cinder blocks, and so that's what we did. We started working on the cinder block retaining wall. I don't know if we have a picture built all the way up, but they got it 5 or 6 rows high the day we were there. So
okay, good. And so while Zach did that, I went to another town with Vladimir, and we looked at some woodworking equipment that they were getting ready to buy for the shop. And I was so grateful to be riding in a car while Zach was laying blocks. It was a great day. Okay, next. So this is the inside, and this is kind of after it's been cleaned up. As you can see, holes in the ceiling. Go ahead. And and just the general condition inside the main house. There in this particular room, they housed 8 guys, and it was just a regular sized bedroom, 10 by 10 bedroom. Next one, this particular one, 10 people could sleep in a regular 10 by 10 bedroom. And next, okay, so go back one. So that's the house, and then the shop. So they're housing the men here. They've got the shop. I don't have pictures of where the young ladies are living because it's just a house that got opened up right across the street from where Vladimir and Ina live, and they were able to rent it and house the young ladies there. So they got a place for the guys, they got a place for the girls. And they're working on the shop. And so before, when I was there in May, I got introduced to what they were doing, and I said, "So how much money do you need to finish this?" And they, did some back of the napkin calculations, said we need $25,000 to buy the material to finish both the shop and the house. And I said, "That's nothing. That's not much." So I said, did that little step of faith, and I said, "Well, here's my step of faith. Well, I'll try really hard to see what I can do to raise the money and let somebody else pay for it." That's a great step of faith. That's a little baby step, And I said, okay. And so we've been working diligently, letting churches know and people know of the need that is there. And we were able to go back with about $16,000, $17,000 and help get that going. And I believe by next month we'll have the next 10,000. I've got some commitments coming in. So, Yay God, yay God. So they're really excited. One of the other things that I didn't know about was, I mean, they have so I've been working with them, they have a summer camp that they started a couple of years ago. And this year they had 140 kids that came out to summer camp. But I didn't really understand the significance of that. Because again, we're looking, this is a small village, and it is poor, and getting 140 kids out for 2 weeks of summer camp, that's a miracle in and all of itself. So they took us out to the farm that they just acquired last year, and it will give them the space to grow. They've already got 200 kids wanting to come to next summer's camp. And out at this old farm, there's 3 houses that even more extreme fixer-uppers. 3 old houses, but mostly it's the land. And there's some farming going on there now. They've next slide. They've got some beehives, which we brought a jar of honey home.
I'm sharing it again.
Okay, well, you don't have to. It's just really good. And the apple orchards, so they're working on it. And one of the things that really impressed me is how they're working to make this a sustainable operation. They don't want to just live off donations every time. They still need it. But they've got the apple orchard, they've got the bees, they're building the shop, they're doing everything they can to provide jobs as well as being able to take care of some of their own needs. Okay, and then potatoes. Yeah, tell us about the potatoes, Zach.
All right, so this is the machine. What it does is it undercuts the dirt there and just flips everything upside down, spits the potatoes out on top. And so I don't know how many, probably over 10 acres of potato farms. We had 3 of them. There's probably 25 of us out there total. A few kids, you know, some women, some men, just a good mix, teenagers, older people. And we all just grabbed some bags and we just started loading the bags with potatoes. And so that's what we're doing. And we go through, we sort the potatoes, and it takes all day for us to fill up 25,000 pounds of potatoes plus.
Yeah.
Plus.
Yeah.
And so we do that, and then we load them all into trucks, and they filled 2 cellars.
Well, 3. There's
2 cellars
I
plus.
found out there's a cellar over at the girls' rental house, and they filled that.
They filled that
Yeah.
too. So more potatoes than you can fit on the stage to the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of potatoes, and so but that was kind of that catalyst bonding moment that I was talking about too.
So we ended up picking about 300 bags, 80 to 100 pounds per bag, and again, you know, working late into the day, and as I was talking with Vladimir, I said, you know, this is great. This is a lot of potatoes, but you know, this is more potatoes than you guys are going to be able to eat in the whole year. You know, breakfast, lunch, dinner is still a lot of potatoes. And he just smiled. He says, well, but in the church, we have a lot of elderly people that don't have enough food. So it's important to teach the young men and the young ladies that they need to take care of their elders. And so they're out here planting and harvesting these potatoes in order to give food to the elders. And then in the community, there's a lot of poor people, and they wanted to be able to have extra potatoes to give to those that were in need, even though they weren't a part of the church. And, oh, duh. Yeah, let's do that. And so we got those bags. Oh, he got tired. That was actually me. But you see these bags of taters here. Back one.
Go back one.
So this is what they were, 80 to 100 pounds. All right, go ahead. And go ahead. And you got 300 of those. And so after a nice big day of picking, we sat down. This was lunch at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And after lots of work, and everybody's just having a great time. We're eating, and lots of spaghetti and not much else. But it was great. It was satisfying and fulfilling. Next, and then this was when we finished up. And you can see it's dark. It was about maybe 9:30, 9 o'clock. Was it that late?
Yeah, 9.
Yeah. And so we had a prayer of thanksgiving. And that God had enabled us to be strong and to pick potatoes, and saying thank you, God, for the strength to be able to do this, and bless the potatoes as they go forth. Right before this, the trucks had gone down the rows, and Zach was with the guys, and they're picking up all these bags of potatoes and loading them in the truck. And then once they got the truck full, they'd drive over to a cellar, and then they would grab a bag of potatoes and walk a story down the steps and stack them up in the cellar. And so after dinner, I kind of helped out around the kitchen area and cleaning things up and washing dishes, and said, okay, I'm going to go help load the cellar. And I walked over to the truck, and it's heaped up with these 100-pound bags of taters, and Zach and some of the other young men, they're standing there throwing these taters up there and walking them down, and I looked at them, and I picked up one of those bags about halfway, and I said, you know, I'm old enough to know when it's a young man's job. and so I found something else to do. So that was like another day of work. And I got to give a little story about this, because you saw the machine that they were using just to dig the potatoes up, right? And it looked to be, you know, like my grandpa's machine. And the tractor was even worse. And so that night around the dinner table at 11 o'clock, we were sitting there, and I looked at Lodek and I said, so, because I'm an American, right? And we've got all the answers, and we've got all the best things. And I looked at Lodek and I said, why don't you get a potato harvester instead of just throwing them up on the ground? Get one of those things that'll dig them up and shake all the dirt off of it and dump them in a bag and go on, and you don't have to do all this stuff. And he laughed and pulled up his phone, and he says, well, I've been praying for about 6 or 7 years now that we could get something like that, and it just hasn't happened, so we just keep going out and doing what we're doing. And I said, 25 years ago, I used to pastor a church in Colorado, which is the second largest potato growing region in the United States. I said, I've got some contacts back there. Why don't I call up one of my pastor friends back there in Colorado and see if they got any rich farmers, and see if they can buy you a machine. Now, honestly, I was half joking, just half joking. And, but I just thought, whatever. Hey, God, they need a potato harvester, right? And he laughed and said, yeah, that'd be great. We'd love to have one. So, okay. So, do you often see God work in a straight line from point A to point B? I don't. My God goes walkabout. And he just drives me nuts sometimes. Come on. So I'm going to leave you there. I'm going to go back about 4 weeks ago. Karen and I took a holiday and we went to Egypt. And while we were in Egypt, there was another couple on the tour with us, Mike and Colette. And they're a little bit younger than us, but we bonded and had fun. And they were really great people. And they saw my wristband that says Ukraine on it, and they said, we're going to Krakow in Poland on March the 6th. I said, really, why? Well, we don't know. We just want to help the refugees. We just want to help the people in Ukraine, and so we've rented an apartment for 2 months, and we're just going to go and see what we can do. I'm like, okay, well, I can hook you up with some people. And so when they got in, they called me. As Zach and I were leaving, they actually drove down and picked us up at the border, right, in Medica? No, at the border, yeah. And no, they picked us up in Jesus at Wyoming. Oh, that's right. Yeah. It's a good thing there's two of us. So they picked us up and took us back to Krakow. We're going to fly out the next day, and we had dinner. And I'm sitting there around the dinner table, and remember, these are guys that we just kind of casually knew on a vacation that we had taken. And we're talking, and he asked about the work in Ukraine and what they could do to help and everything. So I was telling him, and I thought, I'm going to tell him about the potato harvester. And so I told him the story of the potato harvest. And he looks at me, and his daughter looks over at him. She's about, 15, 16? And daughter looks over and says, Dad, you were a farmer. And he goes, yeah, I know. He said, that's hard. He said, call Vodic and tell him I'll buy him a potato harvester. I said, what? He's like, how much? And Vodic said $6,000. And I'm like, no, that's not enough. I said, he needs between like $8,000 and $9,000. He goes, okay, Yeah, we'll take him the money next week. I said, what? And he goes, yeah, we'll do it, we'll cover it. And his daughter's over there, good on you, Dad. Way to go. And I was like, wait a minute, God, I haven't even had a chance to put my plan in action. I got a good plan. And there it was, and they arrived on Monday of this week and gave them some money, and they're down there now. They're going to spend 3 or 4 days and see what all's going on and help it out and doing what they can do. And it's just, isn't it cool?
Amen.
It's just cool. It's just cool. Okay, so we finished the potatoes. Now we're going to just take about 2 or 3 seconds on the next 30 slides. These are the people that are living and working with Vlodek and Ina. These are the people they're taking care of. That's Ina, by the way. And that's the group. I just wanted you to see the faces of the people. Not any different from you or me, just a little bit younger. And but you know, men, women, boys, and girls that are at a hitch in their life, and God has brought someone into their life that can get them through it. And that's just all Vladimir and Ida. That's what they're all about. They're not getting anything out of this. You saw their house. I mean, they've got 5 kids of their own, and they still make room for more. And Ida's out there 3 times a day cooking for 15, 20 people, and you know, it's just wow. It just really humbles our heart. There's 2 things that I got to talk about with Zach though, because what we learned, you know. Zach's a pretty strapping boy, and you know, he can actually get too much food. Yeah. We'd sit around the table, and Ida would put out this spread of just, you know, simple food, and we would eat, and we're like, okay, we're full. And you know, what was it that Ida would say?
She'd say, do you like it?
Yeah.
Eat some more.
Eat some more. You like it? Eat some more. And just feed us until we were just like having to roll out of the chairs and go out. The other thing that is part of the culture in Ukraine is you get married very young. And you know, it's just if you're 18 and not married, there's something desperately wrong. And so Zach, being 29 and not married, at least 2 conversations with married women at the house, and then Ida.
Yeah, they gave me quite the interview.
Yeah. I mean, we almost had passports ready for him to bring a bride home. And, they really gave him grief over that. And believe me, I didn't interfere at all. I just sat back and go, this is fun. This is fun. And I never thought I would see Zach blush. But, oh my, he did too. And some, you know, a lot of these young ladies are eligible, Zach. So, all right, next slide. So this is Vladimir and Ina, like I say, just normal, ordinary folks. Nothing extraordinary about them except for their heart and their willingness to open their home and open their heart. Just amazing people. Next. So when we got ready, we were preparing to leave, and on Monday, I woke up with a horrible cold and getting over it finally. And Zach and Vlodek and some of the other guys were going to go to the city of Kiev, the capital city, which is about 3 hours away. And I got up and said, I'm not going. Zach, you're on your own. Go for it. And Kiev is right here. And I'm visiting with Ida a bit later, about an hour, hour and a half later. And she brought me some tea. And she said, the guys are coming home. I go, what's going on? She says, well, they're dropping missiles and rockets on Kiev, so they decided they should probably come home. I go, yeah. And so they turned around and came back. And so over the course of Monday and Tuesday, there was a fierce barrage of missiles and rockets that were coming in all over Ukraine, and it continues through today. They've struck again. But anyway, so there was this map that was put out by the government showing all of the cities where the missiles were falling. And this is where we were, right here. And this right here is the city of Lviv. And so I thought, oh, and we couldn't hear anything. We couldn't see any flashes. It was, we weren't in the midst of that. But as you can see, it was kind of like all around us.
Yeah, we stopped to get souvenirs on our way out anyway.
So we had told Vladimir that on the way back we wanted to stop in Lviv and pick up a couple of souvenirs, right? Well, now we got bombs flying, right? And Lviv had been hit on Monday with 3 or 4 missiles. And so as we're driving out on Tuesday, we get to Lviv and he pulls off and starts headed. I go, where are you going, Vladimir? He goes, well, you said you wanted some souvenirs. And we're like, okay. So we get into town. It's like just a western deserted town. There was nobody on the streets. All the shops were closed. And the other's like, come on. And so we go walking down the street and we find this shop. The door's closed. And she opens it up and sticks her head in and says, hey, you open? And the lady's like, sure, come on in. And we got in, we got our stuff, we got in the car, and so this is Lviv, and we headed back. And 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Less than 15 minutes after we left, all of a sudden, Ida's phone goes beep, 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 beep. And there was an alert from the cell company saying that Lviv had just been hit with like 3 or 4 rockets, and all the electricity was out, and everybody needed to take shelter. All right, drive faster, please. Drive faster. And so we got to the border over here in the city of Medica, and without any harm. But we saw over in the fields. Well,
saw military bunkers everywhere. Just sandbags built up with random defense stations. But there is the craziest thing. There was like random cars with like rocket radars on top of their cars and a little tiny bunker built up, just ready to probably shoot missiles out of the air and stuff.
Yeah. They were setting these up on either side of the road that we were driving on. And next slide. And so the electricity got knocked out on Monday night, and so we were sitting around the table by candlelight. It was really cool. And then next slide. We got this on our phone when we left the house on Tuesday morning. We were only 20 minutes away, from having left the house, and all of our phones in the car, right? Zach's phone, my phone, their phones. And we got the whole beep beep beep, like you get when there's a storm alert. And we got this alert on our phones, which basically said is that Russia is firing missiles all over Ukraine. Do not go outside and find shelter. And we're driving down the highway. Like, drive faster. Next slide. So Ida sent me this little clip from the city of Kiev, and I think it really speaks to, we didn't have to endure this, but this is what many people in Ukraine are having to endure on a daily basis. No way for young people to have to live.
Mark, didn't you say Ira told us that she was talking about how her hands were shaking from previous missiles?
Mm-hmm. She was scared. She was trying to find safety. And so it's the heart and the lives of the young people. We can't save the whole country, but we can work with a couple that's doing what they can do to touch the lives of the people they come in contact with. And that's the thing, you know. I can't save everybody, but you know, I can make a difference in your life. I can make a difference in your life, and hopefully I can make a difference in your life. And that's enough. If God can use us, God can use Zach to touch the lives of people with his devotion and his tenacity to get out there, even though he didn't speak the language, he didn't know what was going on, everything was done differently, but to just stick in there and say, I'm here for you, I'm ready to help you, and let's get this done. And that's what God's looking for. Just in willing hearts, ready hands, and being open to what God would have us do. And that's really what it was all about. Is 11:30 the cutoff? Okay. So, anything else you want to say? Okay. Thank you, Zach. Zach, give him a hand.
Yeah.
Amazing travel companion and a hard worker, and we'll definitely do it again. And I've got some ideas for something we'll talk about. Okay. So, I really want to share this. I'll promise you we'll make it like 10 minutes. Okay. I've got a clock right there. 10 minutes. Is that all right? You got your permission? Is that okay? Okay. So, and the reason is because something was said earlier this morning when you were talking, Stefan, about surrendering and surrendering. And then Zach came up and he talked about conditional surrender. And I had this in my hip pocket. I said, if I have time, I'll do it. And because of that, I want to share this. So, and this is the struggle to surrender. And it's taken out of Romans chapter 12:1. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, which is your true and proper worship. Let's see, I'm going to skip some of this here. So a few years ago, I did an aptitude test. And do you do aptitude or personality tests as folks come in? Okay. We did this years ago. And if you have ever worked with me, if you know me at all, you will not be surprised that my test came back and said that I was a problem solver. And because I'm the kind of guy, if something's broke, let's fix it. Okay? Now, that's not always a good thing. And it's taken me decades to figure that out. It's not always a good thing because it in fact creates much frustration because you know what? I can't always fix it. And that just drives me nuts. And there are some things that no matter how hard I try to fix, it's just too broken. I don't have the skill set. I can't do it. There are certain things in my health and aspects of ministry, the politics of the world. There's just too many problems. And I can't implement or organize half of them when they come into my life. Well, what I have learned is that when my grip is loosened and the weight that I carry is taken away, and I can begin to relax and watch God work. Sometimes it's a fast process, sometimes it's extremely slow. But I'm left in a place that I don't like. It's called flat up against the wall. And I know that you've been there. And I don't like it. And there's no way to escape. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to go. But it is in that place that I'm faced with the choice. Do I keep fighting this on my own? Or do I surrender to the only one who holds all of the solutions? When Karen, my wife, and I came together 24 years ago, my life was a mess. And I really worked hard to fix it. I did everything that I could think of. I had all the good self-help theory books out there, and I was going to make it happen. And I refused to take no for an answer. And I was assertive, and I was going to claim it in faith. And yeah, I failed. And one evening, Karen sat down with me, and she goes, you fight against God more than any person I know. And I said, wait a minute. I'm not fighting against God. I'm just trying to help things along here. I'm trying to, be the man of faith and be the man of God. I'm trying to figure out how to get it all done. I'm trying to make sure that God's... All of a sudden, I just stopped and go, oh, I'm trying to make sure that God's doing this right? Hello. And she said to me, maybe you should just let God work. Just rest in that. And surrender. And stop struggling. And I pushed and I climbed and I searched out every avenue, every alley, and there was nothing left, and I was completely exhausted. And this is where Karen reminded me of the principle of surrender. Now, I'm North American, I'm from Western culture, I'm white, I'm from the USA, I'm a Christian. And all of these things she was telling me was antithetical to everything I was taught from the day I could walk. Because we make it happen. Only we don't. We have to surrender to the one that has all the solutions. And so here I take my first look up, and in looking up I find a sovereign God who looks past all of my stubbornness, and He sees the broken child for who I am. And here I can finally lift my hands and let go of all of the unfulfilled expectations, let go of all of the unfulfilled dreams, let go of all of the broken relationships, let go of my sickness, let go of my sin. I can just let go of myself and surrender. That's tough. So I want you to imagine a little child. She's got a cookie in her hand and it's time to go to bed. Mom says, give me the cookie, I'll keep it safe for you. The child says, I know your mom, you'll eat it. No, really, give me the cookie, you're going to go to sleep, you're in bed, let me keep your cookie safe for you. Not going to happen. And the child falls asleep, and in her sleep her hand clenches back and forth, and she rolls over, and in the morning she wakes up to a puddle of crumbs and her cookie's gone. Tried everything she could to hold on to her cookie. And what she had safeguarded so much was now gone, because there's a limit. Hear me now. There is a limit to what you can do to protect that which you hold dear. And as long as it was in her hands, it was limited. But if she would have just given that cookie over to her mom, if you will just give your cookies to God, He will keep them safe. There's no limit to His ability to safeguard your dreams, your desires, your life. There's no limit to what He can do to make sure that you have the freedom and the life that God intends for you. No limit. You just got to give God all your cookies. As my grip is loosened, the weight that I carry is taken away, I can begin to relax, and I can watch God work. Sometimes it's a fast process, and sometimes it's extremely slow. It requires a lot of stepping back and resurrendering over and over and over again. So, here's a little point for you. How many of you think that you've come to Teen Challenge, you've taken the step in your life, you've made that commitment, you've done that, now it's done? Anybody agree with that? No. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing unholy. There's nothing unspiritual in getting up. If you have to get up from your knees 4 times a day and say, God, I surrender to you. That's fine. Because that's all He wants from you, is you to surrender. And if your pride is such that you have to do that 4 times a day, then by God, do it. That's where you will find the grace of God in your lives. He sees the whole picture of our lives before He even puts the paintbrush to the canvas. Now, I know that when I get to heaven, if you'll allow me to follow that illustration, when I get to heaven, there's going to be a painting, and it's going to be named Mark Garner, where he's done his thing, right? And all over that canvas, there's going to be little blotches. There's going to be little daubs of paint. Oops. There's going to be places that are messed up, really messed up. But that's okay, because He sees the whole picture, and He knows that when it's all done, in spite of the splotches, in spite of the missed brush prints, I'm going to be beautiful in His eyes. Amen. As His child. We seek periodically to control our lives. The majority of us, I think, probably have trouble handling surprises, particularly unpleasant ones. We like to gain control over circumstances, right, Zach?
Yeah.
Sometimes we want to do the most incredible things in order to maintain control. Hello. We will do some of the most, all right, I won't make it nice. Sometimes we do the stupidest things that you could ever imagine in order to stay in control, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could say incredible. That's nice. Really stupid. And I can say that because I've been there, okay? All right, we think that if we do these things and gain control, that we will have peace. Again, in our own attempts, because I can do this, in our own attempts to improve things, what do? We make them worse. Yeah. Because in the calm that I make, there's only chaos. You know, the promises of God, I read in the Bible, and I read these things, and I find myself even now saying, yeah, that's true. But the words have to make it into your heart. My faith in my life, in my situation, at my time, have become so shaken because I didn't get my way. God didn't do it the way that I planned for him to do it. God didn't even do what I planned for him to do. Not in my time, not in my way. Because no matter what I said intellectually, I was not fully surrendered. And at that moment, I had to allow him to give birth to a new dream in my heart, a dream of surrender. I'm going to go through this, and then we're going to close. Because this is speaking to you, tough guy. You know who you are. I'm not a tough guy. This is speaking to you. Surrender. Now, I can say, I'm going to surrender it all. I can sing the song, I surrender all. Okay? But I don't know about you, but, you know, I want to know who it is that I'm going to surrender to. Because I'm like Jacob and Zach talked about. I got some conditions here, okay? God, if we're going to do this, who are you? Okay? And then I was reading through, preparing this a couple of months ago and reading through this, and I asked myself, okay, so who are you, God? You want my surrender. You want my life. You want me to give it all to you. Why? Why should I? Who are you? I'm going to tell you who he is. The scripture tells us in the Old Testament when Moses is out in the desert and this bush starts burning but not being consumed, and the voice comes out of that bush and says, I am. Okay? I am. And when you go to the people of Israel or to the Pharaoh in Egypt, you tell him that the I am that I am has sent you. Okay, I'm going to get a little Southern gospel on you here. So when I doubt if anyone is compassionate enough to forgive me for all of the sins of my past, he informs me that I am. When all of the doubts and all of the fears that have bombarded my faith every day, I hear one comforting echo answer to all of my questions, I am. God's existence can be debated, it can be talked about in the highest intellectual forums, in the smallest country diner, but in all of our taking and thinking, there's one truth of God that is evident, and it is this: I am omniscient. I am omnipresent. I am omnipotent. I am loving. I am the creator. I am the Father. I am comforting. I am gracious. I am merciful. I am here for you. I am in control. I am beyond all words. That's who we serve. That's who he says you should give it up to. My grip is loosened, and the weight that I carry is taken away. I relax as I watch God work. The process requires us to have a different focus in our vision, because sometimes God's solutions are different from my own. The mystery of God is beautiful. The assurance that he will not desert me when I have questions. You hear that? Just because I have a question doesn't mean that God's going to desert me. That's part of the surrender process. asking questions. He gives me peace. And I'm willing to acknowledge that my life is not entirely mine. Surrendering my desires and my life provides Him an opportunity to use me. He chooses because His ways are right and true. Dear Father, help me to stop trying to comprehend everything about You, about the world, and my life. And help me to pursue a closer relationship with You. Today, I want everyone to stand. I want you to hold your hands out. Just empty hands. Say, today I am standing with my empty hands stretched toward heaven. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to try to fill them all up again and do it my way. But right now, through this struggle, I surrender to You. God, You are faithful, and I am so glad that You are patient with this child, this broken child that I am. I know that You're willing to accept any problem. And when I hold my hands up to You, I know that You are able and willing to take everything out of my hands and forgive me. All I have to do is admit that I don't have the solution. And let go and let God. Let go and let God. So, Mr. Tough Guy, are you willing to surrender? Are you willing to lay it out before God and say, okay, I know who You are, God. And I want to give it to You and surrender to You. And whatever You want me to do, I'm willing to do it. If that's your word this morning, I want you to just say amen. 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 Stefan.